introduce myself. My name is Emily Parks. I am the chapter president for the Greater Raleigh chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners. And I want to say a big thank you. A thank you to everybody who is here on Zoom right now, who has worked to make this luncheon possible, and also to anybody who's watching the recording. But we all are so very well aware that every one of you have a lot of choices. You have choices for where you invest your time, your energy, your brain power, your monies. And we as a chapter are so very grateful that you choose to engage with and support the mission of the National Association of Women Business Owners. So we strive as your leadership team here to make this a winning experience for each of you, just like I know that each of our members does. So we're going to go through some welcomes, but as you see on your screen right now, these are the rock star members of our NAWBO Greater Raleigh chapter. And it is because of each of you, as well as our supporting community partners, that we have the most amazing chapter for NAWBO anywhere in the country. I'm convinced of it. And so thank you all. If you, as we go through the introductions and the welcome remarks, if your category is mentioned, for lack of a better term, like as we're welcoming people, you'll see at the bottom of your screen something that says reactions. So if you will do a thumbs up, or you can raise your hand to let people know that you're part of that category, we would greatly appreciate it. First and foremost, I want to welcome our members, but I also want to do a special welcome to our guests. We have several guests who are joining us today. If you are a guest, please make sure that you enter your name, your company name, and what you do in the comments, in the chat section of our Zoom, so that the rest of us who are here can get a better feel for who you are and can reach out and connect with you. We will have plenty of time at the end of today's meeting in our breakout rooms for people to network and converse and get to know each other better. But the chat, I find, is a great way to kind of highlight guests and get a feel for who's in the room, so that people can follow back up with you and make sure to connect with you. I would also like to take a moment to recognize our service members. If you are a current or retired member of the Air Force, the Army, the Coast Guard, the Marines, the National Guard, the Navy, or the Space Force, please make sure to give us a thumbs up or raise your hand to let us know. And we are all so very appreciative of your service to our country. It is because of you that we live in the land of the free and have the rights, responsibilities, and privileges that we do. So thank you so very much. I would also like to acknowledge our mission. So the National Association of Women Business Owners is here to propel women entrepreneurs into economic, social, and political spheres of power worldwide. We have several committees throughout our membership that strive to facilitate and reinforce this mission. One of the fundamental elements of this, you'll see, is political spheres of power. And we do that with our relationships with elected officials. We are a bipartisan organization, which is super important to us, facilitating public policy that makes it easy for us to start, run, and grow our businesses. But we love to have those conversations, share our experiences, express our specific needs, so that our elected officials can create policy that actually supports our businesses. So I would like to take a moment to welcome any elected officials or candidates who are in our attendance today. If you would take a moment to give us a thumbs up or raise your hand, we are extremely appreciative of our partnerships with all elected officials across all spheres, local, regional, statewide, and national. We have great working relationships with individuals across all parties and all facets of government. So thank you all very, very much. I would also like to recognize our corporate partners. thank you so much for your trust, your confidence, and your commitment to NAWBO Greater Raleigh's mission. It is through your time, talents, and treasures that we are able to fund the efforts that our membership is working hard every day to accomplish. So from a national level, we partner with Bank of America, UPS, and Office Depot. At the platinum level, we partner with Lemons Law as well as Duke Energy, and you will hear more from Lemons Law a little later in today's luncheon. We partner on the gold level with Executive Office Suites, as well as Triangle Real Estate Group and Dots Grow. And then our silver level partners are Lifetime Asset Management, Body Lays, Organized for Success, North Carolina Education Lottery, Corner Clean, Roper Group, Lifetime Tax Management, and Gotcha Photography. If I could speak instead of swallowing my tongue, that would be great. But let's give all of our corporate partners a great round of applause. I think I have a clap down here in my reactions, but thank you all so very much. We are honored that you have made a year-long commitment to partner with us. And then also I'd like to highlight a sponsor for today's luncheon. The Flourish Market is an amazing boutique in downtown Raleigh. They have women's fashion, children's gifts, gifting for all of your friends, male, female, all ages, all interests, and they are run by just the most giving and amazing staff who take time to get to know your style as they're wardrobing you and providing style insights. And most importantly, every purchase made through the Flourish Market has a greater purpose. So there's a give back element to every purchase that you make with the Flourish Market, whether it be to help people who are coming out of trafficking situations or abuse situations, or trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. So we appreciate the Flourish Market for their sponsorship of today's luncheon. And we would also like to give a shout out to each of our community partners. Our professional development committee works hard to make sure that you are aware of the programs that these community partners offer to benefit you and your business. But each of these community partners offers resources, programs, events, and plenty of support to help you start, run, and grow your business. So a warm welcome to anyone in attendance, but also a big thank you to SCORE, SBA, Wake Tech, and the Women's Business Center. We are much better because of these community partners. And then last, but certainly not least, I want to do a huge thank you for our board of directors. As most of you know, this is a volunteer-run organization. Yes, we do have a chapter admin for whom we are eternally grateful, but it is our board of directors and their committees that actually carry out the day-to-day working of our chapter. So as I mentioned, I'm Emily Parks, your president. We also have, I think here, yes, Shannon is on the line. Shannon Madrid is our president-elect. Carnella Hill is our immediate past president. Carletha Ward is our secretary. Jess McLam is our treasurer. Terry Dunn is our director of public policy. Holly Van Apeldoorn, who is our birthday girl of the day. So please give her all sorts of the little celebration reactions down below, is our director of membership. Our director of corporate partners is Catherine Burnett. Our chair of programs is Julie Navarra. And our chair of professional development is Penny McGee. So let's give our board of directors a round of applause also, because y'all, not only would I have lost my mind if they weren't keeping me sane, but we also would not be able to offer so much value and benefit and true enhancements to your starting, running, and growing your business without these amazing volunteers. So thank you so very much for our board of directors. And just like we'll hear a little more from Karina later, we will also be hearing a little more from our professional development committee. But before we get to that, Holly, if you'd like to stop sharing the screen so we can bring Julie up. I would like to welcome to the mic, for lack of a better Zoom terminology, our amazing chair of programs, Miss Julie Navarra.
Thank you very much, Miss Emily. So yeah, we want to start today with just reading our NAWBO statement on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So in principle and in practice, NAWBO values and seeks a diverse and inclusive membership. NAWBO seeks full participation in the organization by all business owners who support our mission to empower women entrepreneurs, regardless of race, religious, age, sexual orientation, national origin, or disability. NAWBO's goal is to effectively represent the full diversity of the women business owner community and to expand access to leadership opportunities across the full spectrum of our membership. And today's luncheon is really focused on helping us understand more about how the practices of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging can help our businesses drive growth, improve recruiting, and enhance our culture. And with us today to share about this topic is Susie Silver, who is a senior consultant with the diversity movement. She's an experienced and an effective consultant, strategist, facilitator, and content creator. She's also an LGBTQ+ subject matter expert. In addition to general DEI consulting, Susie facilitates training, listening, and discussion sessions. She also works collaboratively with clients in creating DEI goals and action plans. She's partnered with various educational facilities, startup businesses, and Fortune 500 companies to redefine company cultures that have allowed all people to feel welcomed, valued, respected, and heard. So today, let's welcome Susie Silver.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here with this amazing group, and just hope to give you some things to think about for us to discuss and give you overview of lots of DEI business focused information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Hopefully you can all see my presentation. We got a thumbs up, Emily. Yes, we can see everybody. All right. So approaching DEI with a business mindset. And I know kind of the title of today was a little bit longer, but I shortened it slightly. But we're going to go into a few different things. I'm going to first join with you, and I appreciate you reading that DEIB statement. We're going to do a little bit of a level set of DEI just to bring us all together so you understand my vocabulary and kind of how I approach DEI. Then we'll go into a lot of data. So when we're talking about business, we also need to talk about numbers. And I think sometimes there's a disconnect between diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then really this topic of today, business, and how does it affect your business. So we're going to go into some data, numbers. Anybody love numbers? we all should, right? As business owners. And then we're going to go into some tools, some tips, and then a little bit of a reflection and a call to action. And then I do welcome questions, and we'll have time for that. I'm going to keep my time, keep me accountable for that. And then, of course, these are my learning agreements. So we're here for a reason and a purpose, not just for me, but for your community that you have established, of course, without me in it. But I like to go all the way to the bottom, and my FAQs are fearfully asked questions, not necessarily frequently asked questions. So a lot of times in this conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, there is a lot of, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to ask. I don't know if I ask that, will it sound like this? I hope and for me is a safe place, and you can ask questions. You can ask them, off mute. You can put it in the chat. You can direct message me. You could direct message Emily. I'm putting you on the spot, and she can, then keep your question anonymous. So please do not be afraid to ask a question. And I just wanted you to kind of hear that from me, and I welcome it. And, I am one person, right, with one voice, one set of experience. Yes, this is my lane and kind of expertise, but it's about continual learning. And before we go into that, this journey, All of us are in different places on this journey of diversity, equity, inclusion. That is both personally and professionally in a business. And so I want you to know, as somebody in the space, often called a practitioner, right? I'm not coming in with any assumptions of where you are. As in, I assume that everybody's totally great and we're all over here, or everybody is over here and knows nothing. That's not the case. We're just all in different places. And so that is welcomed. And I don't feel like that's always stated when we're having these conversations. So this is something, of course, on the behalf of the diversity movement. It's just this graphic. I'm also an artist, so I like visual things. And this is round and it all goes together. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to take a very brief moment on each. And before that, with the B, right, DEIB, that's belonging. The acronym changes. The acronym is different per organization, per team. So really that's something that could be a first little tip or reflection point. If you have some kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, thought process, committee, whatever it may be, think about what your acronym is. Is it DEI? Is it D and I? Is it DEIB? I could keep going. Sometimes you'll see an A. That's for accessibility or access. Most people say accessibility. Sometimes there's another E for engagement. I don't see that very often. Not so much equality, because I know I have equity here and people will say, what about equality? But sometimes there's just different ways that the acronym shows up. And that's ever evolving. And for me, what my recommendation would be is have that be specific to you. And when I'm talking to you today, there are businesses and people that are teams of one. You could be part of larger organizations. This conversation matters if you are a business and team of one to if you're 45,000. And yes, things shift and change depending on some of those sizes, but the basic foundation doesn't really change that much. So diversity, when we're speaking specifically in the business lens and lane about diversity, we often, based on our corporate company business culture, default to race and gender. And that's not a bad thing. It'd be race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity. Those are all yeses. We want to put an insert here, an and in all caps. I'm not yelling, I promise, but in all caps, not a but, and expand what your definition of diversity is. That is another thing. That's a second tip right there. Have you defined what diversity means to you and your organization, your business? If not, I would clearly define that and also start understanding, oh, diversity could be, and I have some things here, it could be about invisible illness. It could be about disability, neurodiversity. It can be communication style. It could be how you process information. It could be your religion. It could be so many different things, which also invites more of us into a safe space to be part of the conversation. It's not downplaying anything, and it's just expanding. It's just so much more robust than we think. So as business owners, we really need to think about that because we are generally forced, like I said, with things outside of us into what diversity is. We need to define that and expand it for ourselves. And please have that be a regular practice. I would revisit your definition of diversity often. So moving to equity. Equity, it says here, fair systems, structure, supports. I always change my own definition of equity, but really it's providing people within your organization, your community. This could be in your home. You could take this outside of business, what they need to be successful. And oftentimes it will say it's really focused on equality. Oh, well, everybody has the opportunity to take that development training. Everybody has, the same this, that, and the other, but what we need to do with the equity lens is think about what is varied and how do we differentiate per person, per team, per department to then reach the opportunity for equality. Oftentimes there's visuals with people standing on little boxes or stools. Has anybody seen any of those? You can raise your hand. Sometimes they're still used in this space, of training. Sometimes they're not, because there's things that are okay and not okay with those. But to give you a visual, just for example, if you're a visual person, oftentimes these images have like 3 people standing on stools or boxes, and all the stools or boxes are the same. That is the equality part. But every person on each box is totally different. They're diverse. There's different things that they have, that they don't have, that they've experienced, not experienced, need, don't need, and then some. And so really, if we're all standing on that equal box, we're not going to all reach or have the opportunity to reach. So is that a job? Is it a development? Is it a goal? Whatever that may be, we need to think about the equity. Now, inclusion. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is the D and the I put together. It's not to say bye-bye to the E, but we need to think about the inclusion. And so I want us to think about being able to show up in every space possible and know that you are seen, safe, heard, and amplified. Not just you, the people that work with you and for you. And think about, this is another thing you could take as a reflection little tip. If our general default is, well, yeah, I can show up every day as myself in my workplace, in my community, in my home, and know that I am seen, safe, amplified, heard, that's a marker. We need to reflect on that. And then we need to reflect outside of that. What does that mean if someone maybe doesn't feel that way? How do we bridge that gap of not feeling included or like you're belonging? It's not the same thing, but it's very similar. And oftentimes, even on the data I'm about to go into, people will say diverse organizations are this much more successful. Even my data is going to state that, okay, because it's pulled from resources. Truly, the most successful combos are when you have diversity and inclusion. So I'll tell you this, your organization can be as diverse as you want it to be. If there is not true focus on sustainable inclusion, the diversity is going to go away because people will not see themselves. They will not feel like they can be themselves. They don't feel like they can be heard. So really it's this combo of D and I, again, not taking anything else out of the acronym, that we're going to focus on a little bit more. So that's as brief of an overview as possible. Let me tell you, anybody who may know me on here, I know Emily does, talking's my superpower. So I could talk for hours on each one of the slides that I'm going to show you today. So I want to talk about, this is very business oriented. Again, you're part of a business, you own a business, you work for somebody, just think about it. So this is a little bit outdated as of yet, because I know this says 2020, but I wanted you to think about this. Thinking, and there's some slides and data points I don't have on here, but pre-pandemic, it was interesting. Roles in DEI, so chief diversity officers or a director of diversity, the roles, actually, the amount of people hired in the US was going down. The murder of George Floyd happened. And then there was this uptick and it was the pandemic, right? And this uptick, not only were a lot of like positions created, people were appointed, but there was thing about commitment from organizations, from businesses, again, small businesses to very large businesses. There were statements made. How many of us, and I'm not saying statements are bad things, okay? So I just want to make sure that's clear. Statements were made, external commitments were made, and these are by large companies, but I just want you to think about it as a business owner, and internal commitments. Look at these data points. The external stuff and the statement never even got close to what really happened internally in organizations. This is part of why we have such attrition. Not the whole thing. Have you heard the Great Resignation happening? It's not the whole thing, right? This is a component, okay, just a small component, because what people, especially in underrepresented communities, in dimensions of diversity, saw and heard their people, their leaders saying one thing here, and nothing was ever kind of taken care of inside. There was an extreme disconnect, and that's what this slide is about. So that's just one data point of, okay, and that's what I just want to think. It may be challenging. This may be the first challenge point. It's okay if we have that weird sticky icky thing happen in our bellies today as well, because discomfort can come with this conversation. But if you have made, or maybe you work for somebody that has made some leadership's committed, or we stand for, what is actually truly happening internally. It could be policies, it could be hiring practices, it could be a lot of stuff we'll go into, but what is actually happening? And generally, when we're working with clients and doing a lot of assessments and planning, and my colleague says it, this is her quote, it's like, let's clean up the house, let's like redesign the interior before we like actually do our exterior work. Some people may not agree with that, and I understand that. But that's where a lot of this disconnect from that diversity and inclusion, right? That inclusive part, it didn't connect. So I just want to keep moving forward. And this, again, it's the same thing I just said, but just some different numbers if you like numbers. And I have a couple more coming. But actions not matching expectations of employees. So I will say this, If, again, you're a team of more than one, even if it's two, if it's 25, if it's 50, 100, whatever it may be, people in organizations are looking for and holding organizations accountable for action way more than they ever were. And they're going to make it known. So this is an interesting thing on the left here. So for example, an executive leaderships, and we're seeing this across the board, I'm in it every day. DEI is a moral and business imperative. We do know that. A lot of people know that, right? And generally have good intent. But then when you're surveying and polling employees, there's this massive gap between what is really happening or what is perceived to be happening or not happening, right? And so there's just like this massive disconnect between especially leadership or people making decisions, people having the power. You know, I always say power, influence, and interest. Who has the power, who has the influence, and who has the interest? Those stakeholders are going to vary and change within the organization. And there's some disconnect there. So thinking a little bit more, let's get a little more granular and then I'll get out on numbers soon, I promise. Okay. I know, but it's business day. So diverse companies, and this was even, I think some of these, maybe one statistic in the description for the session today, which I did not provide. So yay to that data point that came out. So diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture a new market audience. So yes, we're talking about employees and retention and maybe some practices internally, a little bit externally here as well. If you have the connection, you can prove not proven in a performative way, but you know the actions happening, people internally, externally, and the way this goes into marketing. You have an inclusive DEI lens for your marketing, your social media, your connection to the community, you will capture new market audiences and that will not slow down. And, you know, I'm going to digress slightly here for just a second. This, and I think we said DEI, like the idea of business and diversity, equity, inclusion is literally not going anywhere. The thing is, mostly in society, our culture, it's been the side item or the like stuff on the side plate. What we want to think about DEI is through every lens and facet of your organization. Now, what happens? That gets to be a little overwhelming. That may seem, oh my gosh, Susie, how am I going to do that? We need to make sure we understand this is the marathon and not the sprint. It's one thing at a time. It's little bits at a time. And I actually have a slide to help you just visually think about different components of your organization in just a little bit. But I know I'm digressing there, but I want us to understand these lenses that I'm talking about. Yes, we do need to think about what are our visuals in our marketing? What are the words that we're using? Who are we thinking about and not thinking about? You know, again, that robust idea of diversity, but that's where we start capturing those market audiences. And then we expand from that. Now, job seekers. And you can put in the chat if you've done this. I have. I mean, looking at organizations, I'm looking at where is the DEI statement? And then also not where's the statement, what are some of the actions, you know, that may be publicized? What's going on? I look for internal policies, but 67% of job seekers say diversity and inclusion is important to them. And I will tell you, especially even over the last year of this work, that is very 100% true. People are doing their homework when they're looking at your business. What do you do socially? What do you do in the community? What's provided for employees? What are all these different things like benefits or time off, or, you know, going more granular? What are hiring practices like? What is feedback? You know, what are development opportunities? So people are doing their homework, not just on a DEI statement. They're going to hold you accountable for it. That goes back to those other slides. People are going to hold you accountable for that information. So a couple more quick numbers here. These really, any of these data points are great for you if you are a person in an organization saying, hey, well, I don't know if I have a voice. I don't know where to start, but I do want to talk to some leaders, you know, or additional colleagues as leaders to grow DEI or to get funds for DEI, or maybe get a grant for some DEI things. Some of these data points can really help you. So 60% of consumers want to know what an organization stands for before supporting it. So one, if somebody's looking to work for the organization, but also if you want somebody to purchase from you, we're doing our homework, right? And there is definite affinity bias out there. I will say that from a lot of people. I'm in the LGBTQ plus community. I want to support LGBTQ women owned. I'm Jewish owned. Like I want to support diverse organizations. And I actually catch myself because I can't be too affinity bias based. It's not productive. Okay. And I'm owning it, right? Like we have to own these things. But think about the homework people are doing on your business too. It's just more than ever. And because we're also home more than ever, people have not have the time. I don't want to say that because like, I don't even know what day it is usually. Okay. But people are going to be they're going to click on LinkedIn bio. They're going to click on your about. They're going to do a little more homework on what they're purchasing, investing in, supporting more so than ever. Now, 45%, it's the average innovation rate of diverse organizations compared to 26% of less diverse organizations. Let me tell you, this is where it's one of those diverse and inclusive. It should say, but it's the direct, pull from some of the reports that I have. That's huge. So let's go, and I'm going to go to, you can read the last one, that increased productivity. These here, and I have two more while I'm saying these points, I'm going to leave this up. When we're going back to inclusion, if somebody feels included, seen, safe, heard, amplified, they're not going to go anywhere. So you're going to up your retention, which is 50% less likely to leave. Job performance increases. This means people are willing to work their very best at all times for you. So you're going to have the increase of productivity, use of hours, like go to the dollars on that one, us business owners. We want people to utilize their time and their expertise to the best of their ability. How do you do that? Honestly, one of the biggest answers is inclusive culture. How do you get there? That's a journey. I have a whole many hours on that. Okay. Hopefully I'll give you a few things to think about, but that's how we can increase things. I mean, I go deep into data. Less sick time. What's sick time about? It's not about being sick. High number of like people not taking sick days in inclusive organizations. Most of the sick time I dug into was for mental health and psychological safety because people were out because they didn't feel psychologically safe at work. That's inclusion or exclusion. So I could keep going, but I won't. We'll move on. But I wanted to give you some real hard data facts. One, and I know I jumped around from, is it employee? Is it consumer? Is it, what is that? It swirls together. It's not going anywhere. How do we start integrating where it doesn't seem like such a big thing that you have to do all at once with tons of money, right? How many of you think about that? Well, I would do this, but I don't have the time. It's okay to admit that. I don't know how to do this without funds. There's little things at a time that you can do. Of course, offline, I'm happy to help you or send you some resources on things. But the big thing, and I think the topic of today is the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion being ingrained into your business is no longer an option. It is a business imperative. And so there are people out there to help, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean money, but you have to be savvy about it. And if you do have funds, it's worth investing in some things. But let's keep on going. And we always say what gets measured gets done. That's really about assessment pieces. So if you have a larger organization, not large, but like, generally 50 or more, it could even be 25 smaller, but it's harder to get really great data. Assessments are great. Action planning is great. Things like that. I can talk about those later. So I wanted to give you some tools. I say organizational assessment. I really didn't even have like a great title for this section, but I wanted to give you some tools. I see a chat came up. Oh yeah, Carolyn, thank you. And Carolyn is in the space. I saw that before in the chat. So yay, I love not being the only DEI practitioner in the space. So please, we're all here together, right? Like I truly feel that way. I know it's not always the kind of thing that happens, but that's how I roll. So that's how I go, Carolyn. So thank you. Yes. So this is something, it's called the diversity development continuum. These definitions can be interchanged, okay? But this is something we generally use when we're helping organizations with assessment, finding out where they are. Honestly, most people are in that compliant to conventional, and it takes a long time to get to that competent and advanced. But you want to think about you personally, your business, who you work for, who you work with, where may you be? And sometimes it will say, well, my leadership buys in, but we haven't done, we're like kind of in between stuff. That happens. Like I said, this is like a suggested framework, but it is a good place to really be honest with yourselves and your businesses where you may lie on this continuum. And again, the marathon happens. This is a lifelong commitment. The lifelong of, personally, for me, lifelong, the lifetime of your businesses and, people that you work with and for. So that's one tool. It's called the Diversity Development Continuum. This is our version. It is out there. I can tell you, you could Google it and have this. It is a visual that helps. So compliant, conventional, purposeful, competent, and advanced. And this is the one tool I wanted to give you. So this says bias on here because that's one thing that really happens for interrupting inclusion. Bias often is a base for that. It's not the only reason. So you could honestly, I'm going to describe this, but I'm going to take out the word bias at times. You could put anything in here. If you're just saying, well, Susie, I just want to do a sweep of some parts of my business. Just think about the outside. Okay, how are we thinking about DEI in our marketing or in our benefits or how we recruit? Like, think about it on the outside. Okay. And be like, oh, I'm going to do this all tomorrow. You may get overwhelmed. So that's also, if you do have a team, right? This is something that you could actually make if you're starting, you could say our plan in 2022 is to break apart, and you can make your own list. This is my list on the outside of these components. And each month we're going to talk about this and how we think about DEI, our lens in this component of our business. Start there. Ask thoughtful questions, challenge each other. That's okay. Now, if you're getting more specific, this is for bias, but again, it doesn't have to. But if you go on the inside, so how can bias impact this function? Your holiday policies, your job placement and assignments, your team and departments, your social events, how can bias affect? Now, bias again, hours on bias. So if you're like, you know what? I haven't actually done any work on true work, like deep reflection work, self-awareness, self-assessment on bias. We back all this up, right? The foundational part of DEI is a lot about self-awareness and self-reflection. It's continual. And then that translates into your business. But here are some of the things that you can do. And that's where you reach out. If you're saying, well, I want to do this, but then you reach out to somebody in the space, or you get a tool, or something to help you work through it. But really it's understanding what is bias. So for example, if we're thinking about benefits, and policies, a big time when bias comes out, granted this just because there's experience here, is just for leave. So how leave is stated as maternity leave. Well, parental leave, that's a biased lens of everybody that's a parent is a mother or carrying a child, or whatever that may be. It could be all kinds of different things that show up. Recruiting, hiring, bias. Oh my gosh, you read someone's name, our brain starts making assumptions. Everybody has bias. I'm going to invite you into that space. If you haven't heard that before, it's okay. It's okay. We all have bias. It's what we do with acknowledging it and trying to mitigate those biases. How we're interviewing. What do our job descriptions look like? If our job descriptions, we have a job out and they're this long and we have all these requirements. One, does that turn people off? It does. Two, do we have gender coded language in our job descriptions? Usually do. Three, if it's super long, what about somebody with some neurodiversity? Are they going to be able to read the job description? Interviewing, bias may come, so-and-so's not making eye contact with me. Think about somebody on the autism spectrum disorder. Potentially, that interaction is very hard. So I'm not going to give too much more because people are going to go, oh my goodness, and start feeling like your heart racing. Please don't do that. That's not the point. It's just to start expanding, right? So I'm going to give you tips on all this stuff of how to bring it together and start one place. But I just wanted to mention a few of those. This is another tool. Then one more tool I think I have. Yes. So this was in the description of the session. So I wanted to make sure I brought this in, this just visual. And I know there's a lot of text on this visual, so I apologize. This is about your talent acquisition and talent management. I kind of just went through a few things, but we are in a war for talent right now. There's talent out there, but we're in the war for the talent for so many different reasons. Is, somebody wanting to work remote or in person? What are benefits like? How flexible is time? What are DEI initiatives? I mean, there's like so many things. And so we're in this war for talent, and we are seeing this across the board. Small organizations, large organizations. Again, this is something that's not going to just go away overnight. So we really need to thoughtfully think about, how are we assessing what we need in talent and people to be on this journey with us in our businesses? How are we sourcing and partnering with people to get more diverse people in? How are we interviewing people, and how are we onboarding? How many of us has been part of it? It's like, welcome to the team. And then you're like, where'd everybody go? And I mean, our lives are busy, and sometimes, again, we're teams of one, and none of this, like, I don't have a team, or I don't have a large team. But we need to continually check in with people, because there is a big kind of gap after a lot of people are leaving real fast. Usually that's because of inclusion or exclusion, and then also there's just this drop off of people needing each other more. And as leaders, I mean, our CEO will say it, like, employees, they haven't necessarily changed, but we're being more vocal about what we need and what we want. And we generally are more emotional. Are we more emotional? No, we're just talking about our emotions more, right? And he has great talks on this as leaders. All of us are leaders. As leaders, we may need to revisit what our people need, right? This is a lot about, what do our people need and what do they want? So just wanted to give that as a visual. Then let's go into, and I'm going to tie things up shortly and then have some Q&A. So of course, I hope I dropped what I call the breadcrumbs. I say breadcrumbs throughout, some little tips, some little things to think about. And then this is specifically for us as leaders. I go to this a lot, but for myself and my own reflection and my own assessment, these are what we call the 6 C's, the 6 traits of an inclusive leader. This is something that we work with a lot of leaders with now. So curiosity, cultural intelligence, collaboration, your commitment, your courage, and your cognizance. Now, here's another tip. I love this list, love these 6 traits. My recommendation is to think about, like, maybe write down the 6 terms and think about what 1 or 2, or you're like, I'm totally rocking that out. Like, okay, I'm always curious, or I'm definitely committed. And think about 1 that you need work on. Not all 6, not 5, not 4, 1 at a time, because this is where we're seeing breakdown of just like, we get overwhelmed. Of course we get overwhelmed. We're humans. We have a lot going on right now. Not just now, but forever. But like right now, it's a different time, right? So if we identify 1 thing maybe on this list to think about improving, that will also improve your confidence. That will improve your productivity in your own journey as a leader. So that's really important. So that, again, this is just something I wanted to, I'm not going to go in depth on this, of course, but this list of 6 traits we have found to be successful. I'm going to go into a little bit more specific in just a moment about things about leadership, but and I do want to talk about cultural intelligence, like cultural awareness. Have you heard cultural awareness, cultural intelligence? Have you also heard political correctness, or PC? Okay, sure, right? Most of us. I'm not saying sure as that's an assumption that everybody's heard that. Okay, I'm not doing that. But again, I could talk on this for a while, but I just want you to think about this. Oftentimes people will say, oh, I just, am I politically correct? Is that PC? Can I say that? Can I do that? Can I ask that question? And this is a sticky thing right here. Okay, sticky, not bad. Just, it can challenge and feel uncomfortable. That's why I'm saying that. I don't want you to strive for PC. I don't want you to strive for political correctness. That honestly does nothing but tighten us up and not engage with each other. What we want to strive for is the cultural intelligence, the cultural awareness. That is where maybe we say something and we screw it up and we apologize. In the questions later, if you want my apology script, let me know, I'll tell it to you because I don't have it in the presentation. But how do we apologize? How do we ask a thoughtful question? How do we know when it's time to say something and do something and know that we may or may not get it right, but we're going to work on that? Again, that intelligence, that curiosity goes with that. So I digressed on one in particular, but I really think we need to talk about this more in the space of the PC to the, you could say CA. I just have found that PC is stagnant and it's very harsh and negative. We're cultural awareness, intelligence, we're human and we're imperfect. And I know a lot of times you're like, that's great to hear, Susie, but like, I don't want to do the wrong thing and I don't want to say the wrong thing and I don't want to make something worse for somebody. Got it. It's a journey. And there's this like openness and vulnerability that we can have when we're striving in that cultural awareness. Again, that what I just said there, not everybody's going to agree with me, especially in the practitioner space. I know that. So that's a Susie opinion, okay? And some studying that I've done. But it's okay if you challenge that, right? All of this is okay if you challenge that. I welcome that. I'm just mentioning it because it's been on my mind and I'm doing research on it. Now, some methods of effective leadership and cultural competence, cultural awareness, intelligence, which so many terms right there. Watch your eyes because I'm going to click fast, okay? So if clicking hurts your eyes, please close them for a second. I'm just going to put the whole list up. This is not to overwhelm. This is one of those things where I want you maybe to look at this and say, ooh, I have never thought about the language that I use. What do I say? Our words matter. When I talk about language, I'm also talking about visual language, but our words matter. I have 6 rules to inclusive language. But one is the commitment. And this is not in an order. I can say, I just put the commitment at the top and then everything else you could kind of go through. Commit. You're going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to be super energetic and then not at times. You have to also keep yourself psychologically safe and you have to take time to not get burnt out. One, as a business owner with this lens in general, right? I understand I'm a business owner as well. Also just for our own mental health, but language, think again about that bias. Do we truly understand what bias is, where it comes from in our brain, how we're actually wired as humans? There's a scientific support for bias. There's also cultural and societal reasons for bias and experience reasons for bias. So have you dug into that? That's a great place you could start. I'm going to say the P word, privilege. I talk about privilege every day. I own it for myself. I have many stories about privilege and challenge and obstacle. Privilege, and this is from a colleague. She's written an amazing article, which is in Forbes and on our website as well. Privilege is not a dirty word. When we can start, and I know that's a hard P for some people, and I recognize that. So I'm not trying to make light of it, but when we can truly understand and own our privileges and then figure out how we can create impact and change with it, that's where it's productive. Generally, when we're stuck in, and I believe in feeling our feelings deeply. You can tell I'm an extrovert and I have lots of feelings. And not a but, this is and, okay, again. And we need to figure out how can we be productive with that, okay? Vulnerability and transparency are welcomed. As leaders in business, we have not been taught that it's okay to be flawed. We have been taught that we have to be perfect. We have the answers, we know what to do. When we mess up, own it. When we don't know, say it. I don't understand that, or I'm not sure how we connect on that. Or could you tell me more about, and this is not just about DEI, this is about somebody's idea or the way that they give you feedback. That is an inclusive lens, right? So I want, it goes so far into DEI, that's where people are missing the mark. It's about these different components that all just have a different lens on it, or a newer lens. Acknowledge mistakes, be willing to listen and learn, and get to know the people on your team and organization. That one of those, just getting to know your people, and I do have some tools for that, can help. Now that listening's hard. Yes, being authentic. Thank you, Cindy. Yes, financial can be privilege. Exactly. Or privilege can be financial. Exactly. Thank you, Lorraine. And hi, I just messaged you back on LinkedIn. I'm delayed in LinkedIn messages if you've been messaging me. So hello. I'm so glad to meet you. Think about those, there was 3 words that I said: influence, interest, and power. Think about the stakeholders. So sometimes, for example, it's like, oh, I am so interested, like I'm so passionate about DEI. Who are you in your organization? Do you also hold the power? And again, to Lorraine, often that power is the financial. In larger organizations, the people that are most passionate, unfortunately, don't always have the power. That is why we need to hold our leaders accountable for this like connection of commitment, right? So that influence, that power, that interest, that helps. And thank you for that. Those 2 examples, you know, being authentic, being open, genuine, and then thinking about those spheres of privilege or influence. Absolutely. So these reflection and call to action points, and we're going to open it up to questions. I'm very impressed with myself, by the way, with this timing situation. I always go over time. So I talked a lot. And like I said, this is so high level. It's kind of like you're taking your fingernail and just scratch. But it's good, right? Like it's important to be there, and not the assumption that you know nothing or that you know everything. We're just like kind of together in this. What I encourage you to do, and I'm going to open it up in a minute for any type of question. It could be about anything DEI or LGBTQ. I want you to, not for me, like you could put this in the chat. I love seeing this stuff in the chat, not for me, but for other people in your community. What was something that kind of made you go, oh, in the last, 35, 40 minutes? What was something that it was impactful to you? Whether you do it in the chat or not, okay, what I would do is write it out, type it out, have that. Thinking maybe about the continuum. Where do you feel personally, or maybe even organizationally as a business you are? And then my challenge to you in the next few days, not next week, and I know we're busy, make an appointment with yourself. I do this on a regular basis, one for DEI, but also business stuff. I make appointments with myself in my calendar. I get my reminder and I show up for me. So don't stand yourself up, just like I wouldn't stand, well, I would hope I wouldn't, but I would really try never to stand any one of you up for a meeting that we had, and so don't stand yourself up in this process of your awareness, your reflection, whether this is new or something you do on a regular basis. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, think about some of the things maybe I talked about that will come up in questions. And then this goes back to how do I tie this together? Because I just threw a lot of stuff at you. I would challenge you to brainstorm one, I say at least, but one attainable and actionable goal to help progress your journey. As a business owner, as somebody in business, somebody as part of a team, whatever your role is, you could do this personally. So what's one goal that's actionable and attainable for me personally in my DEI journey, which often will link to the business, and the other stuff can come. Please. I just threw a bunch of information. I have information for days. Please don't get overwhelmed, because again, that's where we shut down. We're not going to do anything. And oftentimes, whether it's like allyship or business goals or whatever, it's like, I get this all the time. Is this thing that I'm thinking about big enough? Will it matter? Does it make an impact? As long as you're moving forward, yes, all of it. It could just be, you know what? I'm going to change that wording on that one document, or I'm going to go in and just take my 15 minutes and reflect on a few things, or I'm going to read something about bias. That matters. That is big to me. So please don't get overwhelmed in kind of that, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. This one thing. So that's here. And here's my information. Then I'm going to come off the screen just so we can see each other. And I think maybe somebody dropped it in the chat, which I appreciate. Susie at thediversitymovement.com. Please connect on LinkedIn. I promise maybe I'll be better about messaging back. But I do post content, events, things like that. And then the diversity movement. I'm not here this is me, Susie, being here. I just happen to work for this amazing company. What I can say is, one, if you really need services, call me, we'll talk. But I also want you to know about, if you go to our website and hit library, the amount of free content. And before I ever joined this team, I was on this website forever. Blogs, podcasts, white papers, guides, webinar recordings. It's like, there's so much there. So if you're like, hey, I just don't know where to start, go there. Or you can email me and say, this is the topic I'm interested in, and I can, give you some resources. That's the only reason I mention that. Okay. And we're a full scale DEI business. We're not just, in a consultancy, and that's not a bad thing. Like, consultants are important. I'm a consultant. I know we have consultants, right? We do a lot with other things like products, innovation, a lot of business metrics, things like that. But that's another time. So I'm going to come off this slide and say hello to everyone. And I welcome and open the floor for whether it's a reflection, a comment, a question. I welcome that. And we have a few minutes for that. And thank you. Don't be shy.
Susie, I would like to follow up on what you were saying about the apology script, because I think that's important. Do you mind sharing that? Because that is very helpful. I am working very diligently on vulnerability for 2022, and that would be helpful.
Yes, thanks for holding me accountable, because I did forget. So does it feel good when we need to apologize? Not usually. I mean, do any of us generally have the intent of messing up? Most of the time we don't, right? But it happens. Oh, and it feels like I get stomach aches. It doesn't feel good, but we need to understand how to own something that really was a misstep. Now, this kind of script is derived from, and I want to give you her name. I don't know her personally. Her name's Amber Cabral. You can look her up. She's very active on social media. She has one book, another one coming out. I think it's Ally to Advocate, or Advocate to Ally. She has some stuff about allyship that's really good. And this is derived from her work. So I want to make sure, give her credit. An apology is usually one-sided and very self-centered. So here we go. I am sorry for. And don't apologize till we know exactly what we're apologizing for. I am sorry for, state something clear and concise. Moving forward in the future, I am working on, I'm holding myself accountable, and state the action item. You're owning the thing, whatever it is specifically, and you're also rooting something in action without projecting that on somebody else to give you your action item. Because what happens, one apologies, and we could Google this, like I'm kind of a nerd for this in a way, I'm proud of this, that like when an organization has an apology, how many of us have seen it? A celebrity, and I don't necessarily, this is another thing of cancel culture, that's a whole other thing with apologizing, not screwing up, we can talk another day about that. But they're often, I never meant to, I didn't, my intent wasn't. I've apologized like that. So let's own it together, because I'm going to say that that was my apology base. Oh my gosh, I did not mean to do that. I didn't. We don't know. We don't have the intent, because we're kind people, most of us, if not all of us on the screen. I know you are. Okay. So that's where it goes into the owning what it is and figuring out what the action item is. That is more authentic, sincere than most of what I've heard or seen, not just publicly. Like I said, I have done that. And then the over emotions. I have been the over emotional apologizer. Surprise. Okay. I have been the over emotional apologizer. And it did take some important conversations with people in my life to say, have you thought about this, also this mismatch of intent, in the apology? And I was like, oh, okay. So that's also receiving feedback that doesn't always feel good, but it was important. Does it mean I'm perfect at it? No. It means, again, this is something that we all need to work on. And Emily, to your point, being vulnerable, it doesn't feel good when we have to do it, but it is important that we do. Then to take that one little bit further, and then I'll pause for other questions. Sometimes you get all that right, and it's good. And then specifically with underrepresented communities or dimensions of diversity, Then we go into the questions, and you're like, you just told me it's okay to ask questions. It is. We need to be mindful of who we're talking to, because especially in apologies, not especially, but part of apologies has put a lot of extra emotional labor on people in underrepresented communities. Let me just kind of give you a scenario. Susie, I'm so sorry for, and sometimes because it's like not knowledge, right? Because assumptions, people look at me, I'm married. What questions does Susie get asked all the time? What does your husband do? I don't have one. I have an amazing wife. Okay. So it's like, Susie, I'm so sorry for, I didn't know that you had a wife. I know that now. What is her name? And, and I'm absolutely, I can't wait to learn or hear more about her, something like that. And I'm going to be really thinking about that assumption that I made, right? Great apology. Okay. Then what happens is like, oh, and also I'm like so excited about learning about the LGBTQ community. Could you tell me what the acronym means? And da, 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 da. Now, me being me, I'm like, yeah, let's have a conversation. Do you have 10 minutes? However, that was extra emotional labor or knowledge that was placed on me. So you could still ask the question. It's how you ask it or say it. Say, this really prompted me to think about what I do and do not know about the community. If at any point you would love to have a conversation, I would welcome that. I just want I'm open to that. And if you are, I would love to learn more. I do have some questions, but of course, wouldn't place that on you, just like something kind and thoughtful. But we forget because we're just busy and our brains do it. It's kind of like they sabotage us, our brains sometimes. So I just wanted to mention, yeah, I know, right? Well, I hate that question. What does your husband do for a living? Why does that matter? Get out of my pocketbook. I like it. Yes, I know. So there's not just that conversation there, but I get that one all the time. So that's an example. That's a selfish example, right? And I'm sure many of you have your own examples, but that like gives you of the apology, how you can like stay really present and grounded in that. And then also, if you do have questions or want to have a conversation, how you approach that in that situation. Questions and conversations are different depending on the situation, but I wanted to give that to you there. Okay, I'll pause.
Okay, so I have a question. Hold on. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, sorry. Dual rolling here. So
yeah.
I have to ask it from the right device. Okay, so this is a question, actually a personal question. So how do you get over when people ask you that question? How do you get over saying, oh, it's actually my wife, and not worry that it may cause them not to want to do business with you because you say, oh, it's my wife?
Thanks for asking that question.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's a great question. And I think the community here needs to hear that, right? And the community outside of here needs to hear that situation, because there's risk involved, right? There's risk on multiple fronts. So how do I get over it? For this is it's a personal answer, right? To the personal
Right. question.
So it's just my answer. It doesn't mean it's the answer, because of course the community is not a monolith. We know this. I'm going to be super open and vulnerable back. Okay. A long time ago, when I started telling my story, I don't know if anybody has heard some of my story. I was outed. It was extremely traumatic. I talk a lot about it. But when I kind of resolved a lot of the literal trauma and pain and started telling my story, I also resolved the worry about risk for myself. And I'm not projecting that on you, Holly, like you're there or not there, any of that. Like, that's not why I'm saying that. I'm just telling you my experience.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to do business with them anyway. Now, granted, that's easier said than done because we need money as business owners. However, I have found that if there has been some stickiness, or I can tell there's like a body language shift, or there's like emails drop off, somehow something else comes along. And sometimes it's an invitation for a conversation. If you see maybe a shift, or you feel like communication's dropping off, depending on your own comfort level and how much you want to emotionally see, this is the emotional labor, hold. Sometimes you can confront that in a really thoughtful way. And you don't even have to say so much specific, hey, I've noticed maybe a change in how we've been communicating, or are you interested in my services or my business? And, also, side note, if you have any questions about our conversation or when you asked, I just wanted to welcome that. Now, it does put somebody on the spot, but the way that you've said that is not confrontational. And I believe in calling people in or calling people forward instead of calling them out. Now, calling out for me, I'm digressing, is when something happens in the moment and you got to call it out. Okay. But when we're having conversations, one of the most productive things y'all can do, whether it's this situation or something else, is ask questions and be thoughtful in your tone and kind. And sometimes it gets emotional, we know, but that will help. So I've resolved the risk, Holly, to answer your question, and to add some vulnerability to that, not so much in business, because it's I will figure it out somehow, right? Even if I had to ask for financial help, I would rather ask for financial help than have somebody in business with me when we know it. Sometimes we don't know it, right? But that's for me.
I think that's the biggest thing is the fear, right?
It's the fear, right?
Like when people will say something, and so a lot of times I'll just say my fiance, right? Because then you can assume whatever you want to assume, right? It doesn't mean it's a male or a female. And then once I get comfortable with them and I have had a little bit more conversation, then I will, somehow brush it under the rug by saying oh, Elena, or she does this for a living, or so that I don't have to come out and say, oh, I'm actually in a same-sex relationship, which I'm also very new. I'm 5 years out. So at least that feels new to me. So I'm still navigating the waters and figuring out, but it has also opened my eyes to how I treat my employees and how I talk to, and don't just assume my employees want to be a he or a she or just because of the way they look or their name or things like that. So it's opened my eyes a lot to that as well. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that fear, and that fear and the level of fear will be different for all of us, and depending on our dimensions of diversity, right? Of what some of those fears are, and to share space with you. Thank you. Can we do a reaction to Holly? Because that was very honest and vulnerable. I do the same thing still, not so much in business, but depending on where I'm at, because I don't know. Granted, and I'm not projecting this next thing on you either. Okay. This is an example of privilege, right? I own that I am a white, very femme, so that means feminine expressing person.
Yeah.
So my fear when I say wife, for me, and owning that privilege, I get that I'm most likely and actually definitely safer than my trans women of color, for example. And so I take a moment, and again, I'm not projecting that on you to feel that, Holly.
No, you're right, though. You're right.
That's for me, but sometimes I edit. And I've stopped editing more and more over the years. I've been with my wife for almost 14 years, married for almost 10, but I edit less and less. But yes, I'll default to something neutral until I know what kind of environment I'm in. If I'm at a conference, if I'm at, most people in speaking events now know who I am. They read my bio, not know who I am. I'm not that came out wrong. Read my bio to know who I am. Okay. So, that's what I'm saying. But I have edited, and it hurts. And in that moment, I feel it. I feel it in my bones of I've literally just disrespected my whole family. Yeah. And that's not on you either, but that has come with time. Yeah. And just a little bit more release of the fear and more comfortable, I had to heal for myself. So I hope any of that helped. I don't know.
No,
thank you for sharing. That was awesome.
And it helps just to know I'm not the only one.
Not alone.
That not being alone in it. But the last thing I want to do is offend my partner who has been out since she was in college. So it's nothing for her, but for me, it's still very vulnerable, and it's still very well, will they still want to be my friend? Will they still want to talk to me? Will they still want to do business with me? And I did lose friends when, throughout this 5 years. And that's fine. It is what it is. I am who I am. I don't think I've changed who I am personally. I think I'm just the same Holly I was 6 years ago. I just happen to be in a relationship with a different person who happens to be the same sex as me. So, and that's really the only thing that's changed about me. So, and I'm a lot happier. There's that part of it. So,
that's a big part. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. Great questions. Anything else? And I know we have to get to breakout rooms soon.
I'll just say something really quickly about the last two conversations. Is I've been with my partner for 30 years. So and I've been in business for probably 25. So I'm at a point, really, from a social standpoint, a business standpoint, that I feel like I do have that financial privilege, because one thing we have as business owners is we can't be fired. And that's the big thing in business so much for, people in our community, is just the fear of being fired, because it's an at-will state. And it's news to a lot of my straight friends that we can be fired for any reason whatsoever. They're like, that can't be. I'm like, well, I'm probably the one in a position here to have a better idea of what's true there. But I think partly I'm out, and I just use it, and it's just part of who I am, because I can be. And there's so many people who can't, because they really are in danger financially of being fired and being in a position where, financially they can be ruined. So there's maybe part of the privilege that kind of comes with the financial.
Yeah.
Or can.
And hi, Lorraine. I see your face now. I couldn't see it
Hello.
before. Lorraine sent me the most beautiful, lovely message, and I was very delayed. I'm owning it in front of everyone, Lorraine.
Not a problem.
So I hope to connect further. Okay. Well, I thank you for your questions and spending time with me in this topic. Of course, just high level, kind of scratching the surface, hopefully getting some things going, as in the business sense, and also some of the personal things. And thank you for sharing the questions, the comments in the chat. And again, I'm one voice, one representative, right? Not only of the LGBTQ community, but the DEI space, right? And we all have things to think about and learn and say. And so that's kind of where I am in this as well. So I thank you. I'll pass it back. I know we'll probably do some networking and breakouts, but I thank you. Please stay in touch. And I hope to meet many of you virtually more, or maybe one day in person. And Emily or Julie, I don't know who to kick it back to.
Thank you so much, Susie. That was a great discussion, and we really appreciate your insight and all that you shared with us. Also, I believe that we have a special gift for you today, and I'm going to let Emily present that to you. So go for it, Emily.
Well, we are.
Oh, I know that bag.
I was like, Susie, you will recognize this bag. We are very lucky that the Flourish Market has provided you with a goodie bag. And as a reminder for everyone in attendance, Flourish Market is our luncheon sponsor today. It is a women's and gifts boutique in downtown Raleigh. All of their products are also online at theflourishmarket.com. And most importantly, every product gives back to drive positive change. Plus, as a little side note, they do have more than 300 products that are $20 or under. So it's the perfect gifting spot. To highlight a couple of the gifts, or a few of the gifts in Susie's gift bag today, there's a beautiful candle in the Flourish Market signature scent that funds feeding programs for children worldwide. It includes part of their large assortment of earrings and statement jewelry from artisans made in the US, as well as artisans in small communities all over the world, like beauties from Vietnam. This coffee that's in here is made right here in Raleigh from Lori at Blackology Coffee Company, which funds a nonprofit called Bloom Here, helping women in Raleigh transition into safe houses. There's an orange clove soap that's handmade in Bangladesh by women who have escaped sex trafficking. And there's a super cute bath bomb and face mask, because it's January. We need to take care of ourselves and reinvigorate ourselves for the year ahead. As a side note, for anyone who's looking to use Flourish Market as a resource for women's fashion or gifting, they have 5 curbside parking spots right in front. So you can park in those for free for up to 30 minutes to pop in, get your personalized gift or little wardrobing. And of course, they're on social media, primarily with Instagram, but also Facebook as at the Flourish Market. So I just love the staff at Flourish, as I know Susie does. And Susie, that was incredible today. So hopefully this is just a token of our appreciation. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all. You did not have to do that. Thank you. I'm very surprised. So thank you very much. That's generous.
And next is just a reminder. I think, Holly, do we have a link for the survey? She's going to drop a link to the survey in the chat if you guys could help us out. All of you can help us out and just tell us what you thought about today.
It will be emailed.
It will be emailed. There we go.
Along with a playback to today's luncheon.
That works. So we'd love to get your feedback on today's event, and it will help us as we plan future events. And speaking of future events, our next workshop is on February 17th. It'll be from 11:30 to 1 over at, the plan is for it to be at Executive Office Suites. And it's all about the secret of self-care. And that doesn't just mean getting a massage. It means really taking care of ourselves as business owners and busy folks, taking care of our businesses, our families, and all of life. So register now. It's free for members, and there's a small fee for guests, but it's very reasonable. So we hope to see many of you there.
Thank you so much, Julie, and a special thank you with another round of applause for our fantastic speaker today, Susie. Everything from getting the inside of our house straight before we worry about the outside, to calling people in, not out, and talking about privilege and vulnerability and getting to know our people. You were having mic drop moments left and right. So thank you very much. I'm actually probably going to be watching the recording of this just to remind myself of all the action items that I've got from today, but it was super helpful. I've already had moments, as you and I were talking about earlier, of so many diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging light bulb moments with things, not even just race and sexual orientation and gender, but ageism and abilities. And there's just so many ways that we as business owners can better our businesses by being more inclusive and creating an area of belonging. So thank you so very much. I would like to reiterate, when we went over the board of directors earlier, one of the people that we talked about was our professional development committee, and our wonderful Penny McGee is the chair of that committee, but we have a fantastic head of our peer groups with Wendy Gates Corbett, who is here today to share a little bit with us about our peer groups, her experience, and how each of us who are premier members of NAWBO Greater Raleigh can benefit from that facet of our membership. Wendy?
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everybody. It's great to see all of you. Susie, thank you. I love everything about your message, so thank you. I have been a member of NAWBO Greater Raleigh for about 2 years now, and one of the main reasons I joined is because of this whole concept of a peer group. As a business owner, I have a great network of friends. Some of them are business owners, some of them are female, but the idea of creating closer, deeper relationships with other women who are also business owners, who have a different perspective, who can serve as a sounding board, who can tell me it's going to be all right, who can tell me I can do this, I've been there, is one of these are some of the amazing things about peer groups. So as Emily mentioned, any NAWBO member who is a premier member is welcome to join a peer group. Right now we have 4 peer groups, and they vary. Every group of peer group has its own personality. It has its own meeting time, but it also has its own personality and vibe. And they there's one that meets on Monday in the evening. There's one that meets on Tuesday at lunch. There's one that meets on Thursday in the morning, and one that meets on Thursday in the afternoon. So they all meet once a month, but we have just started this 4th peer group, which is the Thursday afternoon peer group. And we would love to create more. So if you are interested in learning more about the peer groups, I am happy to speak with you, and we've got a link to the application. If you would like to submit your application. I have been part of a peer group with Karina. I'm not sure if Karina is still here. But what I love about our peer group is that we bring things that I bring things that I'm dealing with. I also ask for accountability. I set a goal for something I want to do between now and the next meeting, and I have to come to my next meeting and let you know that I did it or didn't. For me, accountability is one of the things that drives me and my business forward, and it's something that I don't do well on my own. I don't hold myself accountable to myself as well as I hold myself accountable to someone else. That's something I've learned about myself, which is why I love peer groups so much. So any questions? We have several members of various peer groups here. So any questions that anyone has about any of the peer groups, I would love to have peer group members share their insights.
And Wendy, we did put the link for everybody to get more information about peer groups, as well as where the application is for the peer groups, into the
Wonderful.
chat. If you don't mind putting your email in there, just so that if people have questions, they can follow back up with you, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And 2 things. I think Karina is just about back on, or if not, she'll be in just a second. So we will hear more momentarily from Karina about a special offer that Lemons Law Firm has for us as NAWBO Greater Raleigh members. But we would also like to get a photo of everyone before we break out into breakout rooms. So Holly, are you able to shift our view to get the photo before Karina shares with us, or how would you like to do that?
So I have it as gallery, so it should be good to go when Cheryl takes her photo. If she just makes sure she has her setting as gallery, then we should be good.
And just let us know.
I'm here. Let me do one more. I'm doing screenshots, multitasking. All right, everyone ready? All right, good.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Karina, would you like to share a little bit about Lemons Law Firm's special offer for our members?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Karina Lemons of the Lemons Law Firm, and also Karina Lemons of Karina Lemons Business and Consulting. I am an attorney. I help creatives protect their works and their ideas. And if you are an entrepreneur, if you started a business, then you are a creative. You don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be a songwriter, actor, or a performer, but you are a creative because you saw that there was a need in the market.
No, come.
Thing that didn't exist, and you created that idea. So I'd like to let you know that as an active member of NAWBO Greater Raleigh, you are entitled to a free 30-minute consultation from the Lemons Law Firm. And so just to let you know, I've been practicing almost 20 years. I know I don't look like it. I look amazing. But I really am that experienced. I started out my career as a general practitioner. I practiced every area of the law except for real estate and disability and workers' comp. Those are the only areas that I have not practiced. Thank you, Emily. It's so sweet. So even if it's not something that I currently practice, currently I do focus on employment law, particularly employment discrimination, and entertainment law, which is contracts and intellectual property, helping people formulate their businesses, structuring a nonprofit or a for-profit business. If it's not in one of those areas, choices are that I know enough to put you in the right direction and to help you in advocating for yourself. Something that I do every day and that we all face every day, all day long, is contracts. So that is a common thing, a common thread in most areas of the law. So hopefully, you'll take advantage of this benefit. Business mergers and acquisitions, that's high level stuff right there. I can generally let you know that, put it in writing and make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the deal is. And so if you wanted to run it by me, I could definitely help give you like general overview of that kind of stuff, and then refer you on to one of my trusted colleagues. And so, absolutely, whatever it is, feel free to just reach out, because you never know. And I'm Karina Lemons with the Lemons Law Firm. My information is in most of the information on the website. However, I will drop in my email address to you, and feel free to reach out. We'll make sure that we'll verify that you're an active member of NABO Greater Raleigh, and then we'll move forward for scheduling you a consultation for free with our office.
Thank you so very much. And for all of those in this meeting, this luncheon, who are guests, if that's not enticing to hear about both the peer groups option for Premier members as well as the legal consulting option with Lemons Law Firm, I don't know what else I can say other than how fabulous our many members, whether they're women business owners or NABROs or community supporters. You should see momentarily an email popping up in the chat for Holly Van Apeldoorn, who again is our birthday girl today. We did find out that Susie's birthday is tomorrow and Holly's is today. So we are in the midst of all sorts of Capricorns around us. But just please feel free to reach out to Holly with any membership questions you have. If you are a women business owner, you are eligible for Premier membership. But if you are a community supporter of NABO's mission, you can join as a supporting member. So there are options for everybody where you can take advantage of the robust membership benefits. And if there are no further announcements that anybody wants to share in the chat, I would love for us to break out into some networking breakout rooms so we can all talk and get to know each other better. But again, Susie, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our amazing members and volunteers. It is because of you that NABO Greater Raleigh is just so amazing. So